I hope you're going to edit this properly.
Well, I don't even edit. But anyway,
Then I'm not talking.
first time POTA activation. What's the first thing on your mind right before we started? You started to say you were
Well,
reluctant to.
let me preface that just a little bit, and that was checking out Reverse Beacon Network, and I thought, okay, on 17, I'm getting to Canada. That's not a bad thing, considering my first QSO was supposed to be to Minnesota. And that's Joe, my QSO buddy.
Okay.
And gosh, we nailed it right away. And when he responded, or no, he called. No, sorry, I'll take that back. He responded. I go, that can't be Joe. This is just booming in here, and all I am is on a Chelegans and a 5-watt radio.
Right.
Couldn't believe how strong he came in.
Great signal.
Great signal. So we were both, and he got a 599. So did I.
Awesome.
So
Now,
that was amazing.
now let's talk about when you said you were reluctant to
Yeah,
self-swap.
I told him even on the QSO. We did a quick phone call before I actually did that. And I told him, I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a self spot, and I know that's going to probably, hopefully, open up the floodgates. But I was nervous about it.
Right.
And essentially, Joe is always like, dive in. That's just his attitude.
Yeah.
So anyway, I maybe 5 or 10 minutes after that, I got everything ready. I was looking for every excuse in the world to not do that because I wanted to make sure everything was perfect before I did that.
Hmm.
And so I self-spotted, and I did not get overwhelmed. Matter of fact, I had to call, I think, couple of minutes, and you popped in. You were number two.
Okay.
Okay, stop stroking your hair. You're making me
I wish,
self-conscious.
I wish my dog would make up his mind here. I'm sitting here trying to record this.
Well, and it's really funny. The nerves are proven by the fact that I got W4EM. I thought, who's this?
And just for
So
recording
I put a
purposes,
question mark. Yeah, I
yeah,
put a question mark in there, and you sent it again with a B,
and just
especially
for this recording purpose, Eric and I talk a lot.
a
So
lot.
it is funny that when we're on our first POTA and we hear our buddy who we know is looking for us and waiting for us to get out there, and then they call us and we're like,
You still don't get that
W4,
last
who are
character.
you?
You still don't get
W4EU?
that last character, just that last character. So anyway, and then you respond to go, oh, Joe's number one, Ed's number two. It couldn't be a better start.
Oh, nice. Great.
And then I just went on from there, and it was slow in the beginning. I don't think the band was quite open yet, like you and I were discussing on the phone earlier.
Yes. Yeah,
And
that's something I want to touch on here before we go.
okay,
Um,
you do that because I'm confused and I'm an
okay,
extra.
sure. So, um, I heard you hit my
RB,
handler because I had you on there.
right?
And honestly, full disclosure, I wasn't quite up and moving around yet by then. I had just a rough sleep night anyway. Um, and then I think you were on one frequency at first, like 20, and then I think I seen you move to 17 on the RBN or on the ham
Yes.
alert.
Yeah, I wasn't getting any ham alert reactions on 20, so I moved to 17.
Okay, so this is in the morning. And so the very first thought I had was, I know that from my POTA activations, I start off on low frequencies in the morning and I get a pile up like gangbusters, and then all of a sudden it will fade out. And I'll go, oh, it's time to move because by now the sun is up plenty warm, it's
Sure.
warmed everything up, and the muff or the maximum usable frequency is increased. And so as soon as I see it kind of drying up on 40, I'll switch up to 20. Starts off a little slow, but then I hit peak season, so to speak, and then I usually finish up on the higher band. And I had noticed, Eric, that you had gone to 17. You went up immediately. So I went to QRZ to look at what's the what's the maximum usable frequency this time of morning. And you were on, 18 dot whatever, and it was just at 18 dot a little higher than whatever. And I was like, boy, that's awfully close to the maximum usable frequency. And then I went to the HF propagation map, and you can click on the map where your location is, and it will show you where you can reach on different frequencies.
Right. I just
We
found that
got we
last
got
week, but
that.
I
Yeah,
haven't
we
used
got
it
that.
properly.
Yeah, we got that from N8PEM. So you click on the map. where you are, and it shows blobs basically where you will reach. And so I clicked on Austin, Texas down there and looked at 18, and there was a blob up to the, well, I think our cameras are backwards. So northeast was a little bit of a blob. And then I went to the reverse beacon network and looked at and typed in your call. And sure enough, there was two little dots over there to that same area where it says you were getting out to. So
Right.
I was going to text you and be like, hey, you want to try a lower frequency, just to see if that would, bring more of a group.
Yeah.
But I know that when I was on my first POTA, like you, I don't want a group. So the fact that you went
Exactly.
on,
I thought I'm okay with this slow response.
so the fact that you went on a Saturday on a beautiful weather kind of weekend, that's you're way braver than me. My first POTA was Wednesday, 9 a.m. Let's do this. Who who's out there at 9
Who's
a.m.
out there now? Yeah.
And but then I found out that, like you said, once you get spotted on that POTA website, that I refer to it as, well, I'm spotted, should start getting some customers in the door. It's like walking to the door of the shop and flipping the sign over, and everybody goes, "Oh, you're open."
You're open. Yeah.
So, okay, so let's talk about the radio. You use the Pentec
Pentax
TR45L.
45L. Right.
First impressions of the radio.
Man, it's scary good, especially for the money. I mean, I've done some back-to-backs right here in the shack with the same antenna, just using a AB switch for the
Uh-huh.
coax. And number one, it's 5 watts, of course, so you're
Mhm.
not going to get out as far as the 100 on my DX10. But the receive is so close. The filtration obviously is better on the DX10, but gosh, the difference between the two, the cost of the radio, etc. I don't see how you can better it
Now,
at
now,
that
now,
price.
to add a little bit of fairness, though, you do have that extra filter that you bought for
I
your
do. I
DX10,
have the roofing filter, yes.
and so you bought that extra roofing
But
filter.
in all fairness, it makes a difference, but it doesn't make that much difference.
Mm.
What the
And
radio
then
can do on its own without that extra roofing filter at 300 is not as
now,
drastic as one might
did
think.
you click the switch and go from CW wide to CW narrow?
With the TR45, I
Yeah.
did.
And then
Yes.
did you reach over and grab that extra little switch under the handle and flip that up?
Don't know what that switch is.
Okay.
I can
So
grab it.
on your switch on your TR45 for wide, narrow,
Uh-huh.
to the right of that, you have your
Oh,
two handles. Underneath that right handle is another switch. When you flip that, it even tightens that filter even more.
let me grab it because I don't know what you're talking about. Um,
And that means we didn't use that one, did we?
no. Oh, you're talking about is that an audio filter?
That's right.
Yeah.
So
I left it
now,
off. It's been off the whole time.
okay, so now, Eric, your next activation, your thing is flip that, and
Flip
then
that.
come back to this same conversation about the comparison of the DX10 and the TR45. Now,
Okay.
obviously, the TR45 is a 5-watt radio out in the woods. Your
Yeah.
DX10 is an amazing radio that
Hard to beat.
has been hard to beat with the filtration that comes in radio stock.
Mhm.
But I tell you, I found that sometimes I'll activate in the wide as long as it's quiet. But if there's a lot of activity, I'll go to narrow so that way I can just hear the signals calling me. And so I like operating in that narrow position because I call it the middle on that particular radio. Because since you have the wide, the narrow, and then you have that extra audio switch, I call narrow the middle. That way, if I think I hear something, I can flip that one or flip that one. I can go to this, to this. And I love that the switches are right there and I don't have to go to the menu to find it. As
I'm
far
really
as,
looking forward to trying this.
there you go.
Yeah.
Did you use your memories at all on the radio? Did you click
No,
play and hit a memory?
I did one time, but I realized that the recording I made was far too long and verbose. So I just
Went by hand.
the rest of the whole activation was done by hand.
Okay. And I wanted to touch on that point, poke, poke, jab, jab, because I was listening for quite a while you were
You
out there.
never.
And I noticed, because you're thinking of so much on your first POTA activation. You're looking at your sheet, you're trying to write a number, Ed's texting you. You try,
Such a
where's this
pest.
at? Um, so and then
I'm
you'll
glad
get
I
this
never did that to you.
then you'll get to sending and you'll forget, well, what am I sending? And so our script, so to speak, is
Yeah,
constantly changing
right.
on your first activation. So did you
I caught myself on one CQ send where all I sent was C and then POTA.
So did you find that you were changing your POTA your script
Yes.
of like
Yeah.
thanks or goodbye? And
Right.
was that frustrating to you at that moment? Like, oh damn, I
No, no,
messed
it
up. I
didn't.
need, or did you
It
just
didn't
flow with it?
frustrate me. I just thought people don't need to hear this.
Okay. All right.
So that was about it. So,
Okay.
but then I started sending a DE before my call sign, and I
Okay.
felt guilty about that. And then I realized, know what? It's a better thing to let them know that the next thing you hear is my call sign.
Very good. And we discussed that on the phone after your
Mhm.
activation.
Right.
Um, and the DE call sign. I like it. I like trying to use the DE as much as I can because I know that as a new CW operator myself, that when somebody just call sign, you're like, oh, wasn't ready yet. But as soon as you hear that DE, that kind of gets you in tune with, oh, prepare to
Yep.
copy.
Yep.
And I like the DE. Um, let's talk about your POTA sheet. Uh,
Oh,
we
but
had
yeah,
made a POTA sheet
right.
and we shared it. Um, how, what did you think off the bat as far as having that sheet laid out the way it was?
It
How did it
it
work for you?
it stopped the jumbled thoughts.
Okay.
The structure helped the jumbled thoughts, and I thought, and I'm looking through there, and the number one thing that I couldn't do that you suggested was to have that separate clock that I could look at and write that time down. And I had to glance over at my iPad, which was hooked up to my phone
Uh-huh.
for a hotspot,
Uh-huh.
and this tiny little letter without my reading glasses, I had to squint, and sometimes that caused me to have to send a question mark when somebody sent something because
Okay.
I was
And
distracted.
so back to the sheet just for a moment as far as so having a sheet helped as far as just taking
Oh
away
yeah,
a lot of your cluttered thoughts, making
yes,
sure that you had something
needed
all laid
structure,
out. Yeah.
needed structure.
Okay, because I noticed that when I watch some of these YouTubers on doing their POTA activations, they just whip out a tablet and they just go for it because they've done it enough that they know what their columns are maybe, and they just write down the call, the RST, and the time, and they move out.
Right.
Um, Whereas for me, like you said, I like having something laid out for that way I
Well,
don't have to think about it too
in
much.
all
Yeah.
honesty, that's pretty much, I was like almost like doing the reverse of a hunter, just the basics, thanks for, the reply,
Right.
TU,
Hmm.
uh, RST, Texas,
Hmm.
thank you, and send the BK and waited for their response. It was very basic, and I didn't want to get too jazzy the
Great.
first time around.
Good. Well, I haven't talked about the POTA sheet. It's made by W4EMB, downloadable for $4.99.
Worth every penny.
Uh,
Send royalties to WX WZ5MM.
there you go. So then now then you brought up the clock. So let's talk about the clock. On the clock, we had mentioned setting the clock to the side. And
Mhm.
prior to your first activation, Eric, we talked in Zoom or over the phone there about um, lessons that I'd learned and when I do certain things. And when I say them, it seemed like nitpicky or it seemed trivial, but I found them to be really good um, practices for me, such as when I'm sending the RST and my state. So I'm like, CQ POTA, CQ POTA, this is it, W4EMB. I'll send WZ5 Mike Mike. WZ5 Mike Mike, thank you, good afternoon. You are 599599. And then I would send TN, my state. And that was my cue for me to look at my clock. Was anytime I send my state, I look at my clock and
Ah,
then I finish sending my state and then BK over to you. And then while you're sending to me, I'm going down there and writing that time that I just glanced on my clock. And it seemed to do a muscle memory
okay,
training to my brain of every time I
consistency.
sent my state, look at my clock, send my state, look at my clock. And I always put my clock on the same side of my radio. And I just bought a small travel alarm. So that was a point there. So when you were writing your time, Eric, um, did you find that you were doing it at the same time, like when you sent your state, as we
Yes,
discussed, or were
yes.
you still kind of new with it? How'd that work?
Well, I was consistent in sending it in writing it down too late.
Okay, right?
And what I would do is just, okay, look at the clock and I go, okay, it's been about a minute, so I would subtract a minute and write that time down.
Okay, right. So
I'm
maybe,
honest.
so you think having that extra clock And
Yes.
while you're sending your state, look
Yes.
at the clock.
I think it would make a huge difference. Yeah.
Okay. And
And
then,
I would.
again, those are the little things. It seems like a nitpicky point, but
Mhm.
it's those little, I think that each of the nitpicky points are the things that make a a successful POTA activation a successful and enjoyable POTA activation because you've gotten over the frustration humps or the
Mhm. Yeah.
oops,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. The flinches is what I call,
Yep.
like I get, oh, forgot the time on that one. Oh, I forgot that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you look up your log and you see a time blank, and you're like, ooh. But that's easy if you only have one because you're like, well, okay, if this one was at 1442 and this was at 1444, guess what? You're 1443.
Agree. It's exactly what I did today. Exactly.
But I just found that little look at the clock, or look at the clock when I send my state became a muscle memory,
Hmm.
and it worked out well.
Yeah.
Um, setting up. Okay, so we're talking about logging. I guess maybe we'll stick to that theme. Um, Well, I don't know if there's really much more to talk about there. I mean, I did hear you ask one person, STATE question mark.
Yeah. I didn't catch their state, so I asked them to send the state again.
Okay, now let's talk about your choice of words. I heard that come across.
QTA. I eventually started sending QTA.
There we go. There we go. Because I was
Well, you know
wondering,
what? The QTH is where they. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Mea culpa.
Because and the reason I thought about that because you caught me off guard.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, I'm like, what's he
Yep.
sending?
Your wife tells me that's pretty easy to do, though.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
But so I'm sitting there and I'm like, so I'm replaying it. But the whole time I'm replaying it, you're still in QSO, so I'm missing everything else you're sending
Oh,
because I'm
okay. Yeah.
replaying STA. Oh, state.
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 Yeah.
Okay. Because then I'm like, oh, he missed the state. And I go, wonder why he didn't just send QTH. Here's
Mhm.
why. Our mind goes blank
Exactly.
on our
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
POTA.
Yep.
All the
Yep.
things you tell yourself, I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm going to do this.
Exactly.
All
And
right, here's
when
the
I had
plan.
when the QTH bulb lit up, I go, oh.
There we go.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, and this is, I think, and I'm just recording this on a whim, so I don't even know how I'm going to publish this.
Right.
The cool thing is knowing um, that, so even though we're like, oh, phooey, I messed that up, no one listening cares.
No.
Everyone on
Who
our
cares?
CW journey has all started in the same place. Everyone has had that first POTA activation, and it doesn't matter. It
No, it
doesn't
doesn't.
matter. It
No.
really doesn't. You get out.
Yeah. Well, I took a couple of hints from you, and that was don't be shy about you sending a question mark,
Okay. Yep.
which I
Right.
used very amply today.
Right. I
And
noticed because.
someone would send me like Chris, for example, NAPEM.
Mhm.
I didn't get the M like two or three times or whatever it was, and I said,
What's the
and then
last two letters of your call?
MM.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I know. Exactly. It's like, why didn't I know M?
Oh, W.
Yeah,
People
that
send
too.
me a
Well, I
W.
got the W's. I got the W's.
Well,
Yeah,
good for you. But
yeah.
people send me a W, and it's like if it's not a W4, I'm not getting that W because I'm W4 EMB. So it's like
W4, yeah.
if I
Yeah.
hear da 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 di 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 da, oh W.
Oh, and then there was a WA4 PIG. Well,
Yeah.
that's a tough one to forget. Pig. And for some reason, my Morse dyslexia kicked in, and I got WA9 instead of WA4.
I heard that.
So there you go. Told you I was going to be honest.
WA4PIG.
And,
By the way,
and
if you
and he was very patient and sent it a couple of more times. I go, oh, geez, here we go again with the dyslexia.
well, that's nice. And I think if you look up WA4PIG on QRZ, they probably have the longest name in
Oh,
the longest name of any ham
okay.
radio club that's out there.
Oh, that's right. Yes, it was like I don't know, like 30 letters or something like that, or more.
Now I got to look it up while we're sitting here. Let me see here. What is the official name of WA4PIG? Let's look that up. WA4.PIG. It is known as Flying Pigs QRP International North Central Tennessee Chapter.
That's more like 50 or 60 letters. Yeah. They,
You
they,
know,
they did that on purpose, didn't they?
well, if you'd
We
if
have
you'd
a
have
Guinness
known,
Book of World's Ham Radio call signs.
well, bless his heart, Lewis. There's
Okay.
a fella named Lewis that started this, and he's no longer with us. And Lewis was the fellow that come up with that. And the new trustee of that call sign has been trying for months to change the name. And he's been going back, and it's all about this new cores register and all this changing stuff. And
Uh-huh.
he's really having a hard time logging into it because he has his own call sign, and then yet he's trying to log in as the trustee of this new call sign after Lewis had passed. And he finally just said, "Heck with it." And I think he hasn't tried again for a few months now.
What were the rest of the group not having it? Was that it?
Oh, nobody cares, but
Oh,
but
okay.
the fellow that's the trustee that's doing the logs all the time, he's always having a Flying Pigs QRP International North Central Tennessee chapter. As a matter of fact, on the QRZ page there's a picture of the group at that time, and let's see, yeah, one, two, yeah. So there's two of the fellows that's in that picture is no longer with us, and the guy that's standing up on the yellow. Let's see. Oh, I might be able to share here. Let's see here. Share screen. There we go. Hopefully this comes out in a recording. I've never done this before, but so
It should.
the trustee is the guy here in the middle. That's
Okay.
Kilo Mike 6 November. This gentleman here standing next to him is Doc.
Lewis.
We lost Doc last year.
Okay.
Then Lewis, great fellow. We lost Lewis a couple years back. And then Mr. John here. And over here's Terry McCoy, N5HOT. And you can still find N5HOT and Kilo Mike 6 November at coffee every morning on Riverside Drive in Clarksville, Tennessee.
I've I've often thought we should retire SK for use as straight key
Yeah, let's
because
see.
it seems, SK should kind of
Right.
like be memorialized
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
these people that are no longer here.
Let's see. Absolutely. All right. So we covered that. We covered that QSO with the WA4 PIG.
Mhm.
And then let's see here. And I'll just touch on this one briefly. I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn. KJ4 LCD had made a call to you. And
Didn't catch him. I would remember that liquid crystal display.
KJ4 LCD.
Did not catch that.
Yes, you did.
I did?
Check your log again.
Okay. I don't remember
The
that
name
one.
rhymes with Chantel.
Oh! I never put that together for her, but bless your wife, she's a gem.
So for the recording purpose here,
Yeah.
KJ4LCD has only made CW contacts with me when I've gone out at a park, and I have that on video. Matter of fact, I think it's the day I earned my kilo. I'm sitting there, and she's just learning CW now. She's kind of in the beginning BC2 classes of LICW is where she's at,
Okay.
and so. But she has enough to get on the air if she wanted, but she's so
Sure.
nervous. I keep trying to say, "Come on, baby, let's
Just
just
do
get you
it.
on the
Just
air."
do it.
And
Yeah.
she's just like, "Let me get some more letters down." And I'm like, "Okay." Well, lo and behold, I'm out there trying to earn a kilo award at the park here. So I was going out every morning activating POTA, like 20 days in a row. I went, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear da 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 something something something. I'm like, because Jay, I don't know what Jay does to me, and I was like, oh.
You confuse it
So
with
I
one.
said KJ4 question mark, and then it came back slower and spaced out, and I start writing it, and I'm like, oh hey, KJ4LCD. He had come into my radio room, fired up my equipment, and contacted me at totally
And then
caught
and
me
then she
off
sends
guard.
you and then she sends you the message, better send for takeout tonight.
No, no, no. She just got enough to get out a 599 and her call, and I was so thrilled that she came in here without me
Yeah.
prompting her. She come in here and fired up the equipment and contacted me on a POTA, and I was so happy about that. And the moment I walked in the door, were you messing with me? Because I question marked her. But again, like you said, I called you and you question marked me. We don't even think about it when we don't even think about it. But
Yeah.
now she thought I was messing with her, and I was like, no, because you have to explain, because this is the main point. As the hunter activator, you don't know what's going on each other's end of the radio.
Right.
You could
Right.
have QSB. You could have that guy that walked up to your picnic table, started talking to you. You
Hmm.
know, uh,
I didn't get one of those today, by the way. No looky loos.
no
Not
looky
one.
loos.
No looky
Well,
loos.
and I'll share this story before I get on to the rest of this. My favorite was where a woman walked up to me, and I was at the where the Parthenon is in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a
Okay.
state park. So I'm sitting there, and a woman come up, and she's just staring at me. She has a dog on a leash, and she's just staring at me and staring at me. And I'm sitting there on a rock doing CW. So she lets her dog over to me, and she like looks away, like she's not paying attention. And I see
Pretending.
this, and I'm whatever. The dog comes over, dog nose boops me. He just wants petted. Hey, doggy. And so she used that as the icebreaker to talk to me. And she says to me, "Are you talking to dead people?"
Not until now.
And it caught me so off guard. And so but I answered her politely, told her what I was doing. And she's like, "Oh," and she walked on. But afterwards, I was so like, that was such a perfect opportunity to go, "You can see me." But anyway, all right.
There was a
Let me get
woman
back
that
this POTA. Let me get back this
well,
POTA.
brief story. There was a
Oh,
woman, someone online. I don't remember who it
yeah,
was. It was on Facebook's POTA page,
yeah.
and he talked about a woman who had come up to him and chastised him for the damage he was causing to the ecology and the trees in particular by putting out radio waves.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that one has yet to be topped.
That's amazing. I thought talking to dead people was pretty good.
That is. But I mean, reality is trees.
So let's talk about your setup.
Okay.
So did you use a picnic table, folding table?
Well, I
Um,
brought folding table and folding chair
okay.
because it's something I've
We're
used when I set up at home here
okay.
for
Practice.
tryouts
Hmm.
for practice to make sure I had everything I needed.
So you got to
And so
your parking spot.
there's the wooden picnic table, no cement, real wood,
How far from the car to the picnic table?
50 feet.
So now this is those little trivial points again.
Yeah,
How many trips from the car to the picnic table did you make?
two.
Awesome.
Yep.
And then, so you got to the picnic table, you set up your stuff. What was the first thing you set up?
Well, I put everything on the table. I took the Chelegans MC750 out of the zipper case
Hmm.
and set it aside, attached the coax to the table,
Hmm.
and walked it out as far as it would go for 45 feet. And I was in a nice clearing just beyond some trees.
Hmm.
The closest tree I had, limb I had, they were just the little
Hmm.
fine ends,
Hmm.
was maybe 10 feet away from the whip.
Okay. How was
So
the wind today?
none. I
Okay.
used a
So did you
tripod,
use tripod or
tripod,
stake?
tripod,
Okay.
tripod. Didn't use a stake because I forgot the rubber mallet you suggested.
Okay, so there we go. Let's talk about 2 points there. So
Mhm.
Eric and I talked on the phone about this, about the Chelegans MC750 is a vertical telescopic whip antenna that screws into a 20-inch extension piece and then gets placed onto either a ground spike that goes in the ground or an optional tripod that can be purchased with it.
Mhm.
And we were talking about using the tripod versus the stake. And Eric said, well, hey, here in Texas, we get quite a bit of winds. And I said, oh, okay, so you might be using your spike. And he said, yes. And I said, well, make sure you take a rubber mallet.
Yeah.
Just because I
Drive
find
that
here,
stake in before you screw the rest of it on.
right. So I have to drive my stake in, and then I can go ahead and put the rest of the whip on.
Mhm.
Um, but so, yeah, no wind. So use your tripod. Now, the one point you made was Eric said he had clamped his coax down to the table and strung it out
Actually,
all
what I
the way.
did was wind it through a couple of loops on tabletop boards.
Right.
So I
Yep.
didn't
In
need to
between the
clamp,
gaps.
right?
That's what I did.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. And then we had discussed that. Again, that's another one of those little minute points about running your coax out so you know how far away to put your antenna. Because I have just misjudged. I've gone up, set my stuff on the table, walk over, start putting my antenna up, go to run my coax and realize that when I put the radio, and the MC750 also has 4 radials that you plug into it that lay on the ground. And there's been a couple times where I've just misjudged the distance between me and there, and I've set it too close to me. And now I got coax coiled up near me. I've got a radial near me, and I would prefer to have it, have it away from me, as the operator, so I don't interfere with the antenna and whatnot. Okay, so you set up your vertical antenna on a tripod
Mhm.
with at the end of your coax there, and you're using the Pentec TR45L radio, which we
Right.
discussed a little bit there.
Mhm.
Um, Tuning. How did the Chelegans MC750 work? Did you put it right on? And how was it?
Well, I put it right on. I started with 20, like you mentioned earlier, and I had some notes when I was set up here at home. My purpose was with my rig expert to attain measurements that I could duplicate no matter where I went.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
Example was I went 6.5 inches or 6.25 inches beyond the mark for 20 meters. That's silk screened into the telescopic whip, which
Okay.
is really handy. So, I mean,
Awesome.
the consistency every time.
Uh-huh.
And I went back and I didn't even touch the tuning knobs on the back of the TR-45. I just keyed it and perfect.
Great.
It was down like 1.2 to 1.
Awesome. Now,
And go ahead.
so you were using the tuner in line then,
Oh, it's the built-in tuner.
but you had it activated.
Yes, I had it activated.
Okay. Now for me, when I use the Chelegans, I always leave my tuner turned off when I'm using the
Well,
TR45L.
I suppose you could, but I'm a perfectionist.
Absolute. Absolute. Um,
I want that meter down as low as it
all the
goes.
way. And what,
Yep.
what we're talking about is the TR45L. If you could hold that up, Eric, if it's right there behind you again. The TR45L is wonderful. It has a meter right on the top left corner there, an old school analog meter right there in the top left corner. Thanks. Thank you, Eric. And then you have a switch right next to it that says reverse and forward. So you can
Forward.
flip it to reverse, press your key, and it will show you an SWR amount.
Hmm.
And sometimes it'll come up, but there's also a red light on the front of the radio so that if your SWR is high, that red light will come on. And it is possible that that needle will come up a little bit, but that red light stays off. But
Hmm.
like Eric says, he wants that needle to be flat. I want no SWR. And so you can either keep running out to that whip and messing with it, or what's lovely about that TR45L radio, you reach on the back, you flip on inline tuner, hit that button or hit your key, reach back there and touch those knobs until that needle just falls flat. So
Yeah, tuning
wonderful.
never takes more than maybe one trip out to the whip and back again, and 30 seconds
Maybe,
worth of time.
right,
Yeah,
maybe one trip to the whip.
maybe. Yeah.
For me, I
I
never
didn't have to make any trips today at all for 20 or 18 or 20 or
correct.
17.
Yeah, those silked or laser etched or whatever they are, the markings that
Ingenious.
are on the telescopic whip.
They're
Uh,
ingenious.
for me, that I've never had any problems until my last two outings, where I went to 40 meters with my tripod. I've noticed that my SWR light came on. Never happened before, just started. So I'm wondering if it is an atmospheric shift or something, because who
Terrain,
knows? It's
trees.
all right. So,
Did you remember to put the coil in?
yeah. So all I did was just turn the tuner on, use the tuner, and tune it up, and perfect. Boom, boom.
Perfect.
That
Yeah,
Z-Match
so easy.
tuner is just a dream, a
Yeah, it
literal
is.
dream. Okay, so we set up our antenna, we set up our radio. You got your logbook out in front of you. You got your tablet going, so you got your clock. Um, now let's talk about that moment before you said CQ, CQ. This is CQ POTA CQ. Did you have the I'm all set up and I did tell me, did you just go, all right, I'm all set up, here I go? Or did you do the I'm all set up and okay, I guess we're doing this. Did you have a slight pause, think?
Oh, I had a pause more than once, probably 4 or 5 times.
Debbie called me,
Oh,
told me that she
you're
drug you
such a
out of the
liar.
car and said, you
You're
get on
such a
that radio
liar.
and activate, quit your crying. You're all set up.
But what I
Uh,
did do was when I self-spotted to get the whole ball rolling,
uh-huh.
I put in the comments section,
Yes,
first time out, please be gentle.
I saw that.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. Now, just to throw this out there, um, if you have a friend that's doing their first time POTA and you want to support your buddy, what can you do it to help?
Well, I
So,
came up with the idea of recruiting a
a lackey to sit at home and follow you?
No, well, that's
Oh.
perfect. Yeah. When I started getting responses from call signs that Ed had spoken about in weeks or months past, I knew he was on the phone calling people, get on the air, get on the air, help this guy with his first activation.
Right.
To, and I'm eternally grateful for that because even though I knew it was happening, it sure took the nerves away.
Oh, good,
Yeah,
good. And it's so it takes the nerves away because it's familiar call signs that's
exactly.
calling you. So you kind of lose a little bit of that nervousness when you're talking to them.
Except for M.
And now I will have to say this. Now, you don't know this yet,
Hmm.
because you've just had your first. Do you have your POTA sheet handy?
I can grab it. It's in a box behind me there.
Yeah, let's grab that. And while he's grabbing that, um, he can't hear us now. No, he did an excellent job, and it was just really cool following him. He can't hear me, so I'm talking about him. But it was really fun to sit here at home and listen to his activation and listen to him activate. It was really great. He's coming back now.
Okay, got it.
All right. So how many total did you have for the day?
I had 17 with one iffy. I'm gonna have to
Okay.
double check on
Now
that one.
let's talk about let's talk about this iffy in a second. So on your 17, did you have um KJ7DT?
Yeah, that was number 15.
There you go. Now the reason I brought that up,
Idaho.
Eric, is this. We just discussed having familiar call signs that take away the nervous.
Hmm.
We all think the same thing prior to getting on the air. I don't want to mess up. And so everybody has this key fright. And Evan, K2EJT, was just on with Kyle there on Kyle's YouTube channel, AA0V, I believe. And they did a whole roundtable meeting, which they do every other Monday. I have to look him up. But they did a wonderful roundtable on key key fright, just like Mike fright, but key fright.
Right.
So I'd like to touch on this, on what you said earlier about having familiar call signs took away some of the nerves there.
Hmm.
Well, we are such a small niche of people that I bet you that if you went in your log and you read off all your call signs, if we had a way of tracing them like DNA,
Hmm.
we could probably have everyone that I know is everyone that you know. You know, if you could trace call signs like DNA in the CW world, because there's so few of us.
Yeah.
And
Someone
then,
knows someone who knows someone who knows three people that you know or
correct.
whatever. Yeah.
And then what I found out by doing POTA, and these are my POTA sheets from all my activations, is that you have familiar call signs that are what I call frequent flyers.
Okay.
And I have a video that I haven't posted yet. I'm doing POTA. A friend of mine, two of my friends come and sit down at the table and talk to me while I'm activating. And one of them's talking to me. And at a certain point, I stop talking to him and I just grab my pencil and I write down N4TN. It's a simple call sign, but I was able to retain it and write it all down because it was one of my frequent flyer call signs.
Okay.
So it was a familiar call sign. And just like you said, the nerves go away when you have, oh, I've talked to him before, no worries. And so if you get that mentality about yourself before you even sit down and go, all these people hunt parks, they want me,
Hmm.
number one. I'm going to be nervous. They know it too because they're CW operators.
Yeah.
But we all still can't help but to be nervous because we don't want to just mess up so
I had
bad.
one guy, second to the last, maybe the last, who kept on. I mean, he's a hunter, and I took it from, not that that's 100% sure, but I took it from his errors that he was nervous or
Oh
new
yes,
or both.
right,
And I just smiled to myself and I said, okay, I'm going to kick it down a notch and just send a little slower. Instead of 15, I was sending it like maybe 11, 12,
right,
as far as the Farnsworth is concerned.
correct. Yeah, with a bunch
But,
of space in
but
between.
anyway, we completed it. That's all that counts.
And you say that, and right here in my hands, I have a QSL card
Hmm.
because on my last POTA, I had exactly the same. I'm sitting here calling, and all of a sudden I hear a guy. He's making quite a few mistakes, but that's okay. It
Hmm.
it is so okay. It's more than okay
That's
because
why I
it.
smiled because it's to
Yes.
be expected. I've done that. I still do that. I always will do that.
And you know what it does for you as the activator, or you as it gives you the chance to go, oh, let me relax. You can
Yeah,
relax and you can slow
exactly.
down the gentleman's speed, and everybody else that's been in the pileup stands back and they wait too. And
Perfect take.
and then you get through that queue. So with that person that's making those mistakes, and you've double checked their call, and they send it again, and you realize, okay, I got his call. Okay, that's all. Okay, I got his call. He's going to get credit for this QSO, by gosh. And then, so what I do on my POTA sheet that I made, which you can buy for $4.99 on,
Plus
is
royalties.
on the notes section,
Mhm.
I put down card. And that reminds me, when I get home, that was a slow operator, a new operator, an operator making lots of mistakes. Might just be a guy on a bad day like me. But either way, higher chances are it's a newer operator. And
Right.
sure enough, this gentleman right here that I have the card for, that I just wrote this out, I go to his I go to his QRZ page, and there it says, did my first POTA activation in August of 2023. I made 3 CW contacts and 16 sideband contacts. This has been so much fun. So that kind of confirmed to me he's new to CW
Two.
because he's out
Yeah.
there with that. It's like,
Three,
what
the
are those
ratio there.
things?
Yeah.
What are those things people plug in the hole that's on the front of the radio? It's got a cord
Keys.
like,
Oh, microphone.
that's it. One of
That's
those,
it. Yeah.
that thing. He's got one of those plugged in. I'm just teasing.
Yeah.
So
No, you're
it's,
not.
to me, it's a treat to know that and send him a card. And as a matter of fact, now we're talking about this. I'm gonna mess up the call because I don't have it open in front of me.
By the way, I got Jerry in Wyoming,
Awesome.
and and he sends cards, and I need a card from Wyoming. That gets me down to one or two states where I don't have a
Great.
card from. So,
I got an email yesterday. I think it was Kilo Bravo 3 Delta Delta, I think. And again, he was another one of those, you know,
yeah.
one of those call signs that I needed to slow down for, which is great. That's why I have paddles and a straight key at the same time, plugged it at the station, so I could switch between the two. And so he sent to me, and I wrote card. I get an email yesterday, and it said, Ed, thank you for the card. He says, you were my first ever CW contact ever.
Wow.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. And
That's
he
awesome.
said, thanks for the beautiful card. I'm going to frame it, and it will find a great place in my QTH for being my first CW contact ever.
By the way, I got to send your wife a card.
And what's funny is I've got a lot of cards that are really good looking. I think mine's kind of just plain Jane,
Yeah.
just,
Mine's
but
similar. Yeah.
the fact that he got that he said that, it meant a lot to me. So it just goes to show you that uh, as nervous as I am out there doing it, because I'm still new. I've only been doing CW now for 12 months. I didn't start POTA activating on my own up until 6, 7 months ago, 8 months ago, 7 months ago, maybe. And so I'm still nervous out there. I still, right before that first, you're, okay, here we go. So it is a bit of nerves, but I find that once I get started, it's okay, because then what happens? I start hitting those familiar call signs, and it comes out. Oh, I'm getting off track. I wanted to try to keep on track as much as
Well, I
possible.
have one observation to make.
Yes,
I'm sure you nursed your wife through labor with your son. When you were doing Lamaze classes, did you do the cleansing breath for her? Do you remember that? Well, I remember that with my wife.
I got a confession. They
Cleansing
got one
breath,
around.
okay? And it's just what you do when you start to send. You take a cleansing breath. So you're
Right.
giving birth to the next thing coming
There
up.
you go. When I teach, with the Long Island CW Club, I teach in a BC1 class, a beginner carousel 1 class. And a portion of that class is me getting on my key and sending 3-letter words
Mhm.
for students to copy. And I try to set that example in class. I try to even overemphasize it. I'm like, okay, here comes a 3-letter word with the 3 new letters we just got today. And then
You
I
know
send the word.
you know who pointed that out was Steve on LICW,
Mm,
N1SG.
mm,
And you were in class, we were all in class, you and I together, and he said after you did your breath and sending,
yeah,
he said, "Now look what Ed just did," and he described the breath
yeah.
process and everything, and what a great idea it was.
I remember that. I
Yeah,
remember and that's when I was going to my classes where I was learning stuff,
Mhm.
which I still do. I
Yeah,
teach a beginner class, but I still go to the Long Island CW Club has just got so much stuff out there.
Mhm.
Uh, like I went to my first high speed class the other day, 35 words a minute.
QRQ.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you hear that, and of course you're like, no way, no way. I'm thinking no way. I'm CW for a year. And W throws me off if it's not with a four, right? J clumsy, gets me clumsied up. Um, but I describe it as being in the backyard and the big kids are playing next door, and I stand up on my tiptoes and peek over the fence, and I can see how the game's played for you know
Yeah.
for a brief moment. And so I went to that QRQ class, and Long Island CW Club encourages you to go to classes that are above your level so you can get familiar with it.
Mhm.
Because you don't, if you're practicing where you're comfortable, you won't improve, or
No.
you will, but it's a slow road.
If you
So
have a
you're
success rate over 70%, you're
right.
too easy on yourself.
So you need to go where you're having trouble and stick
Yep.
with it. And so I went to that high speed class. He's sending questions at 35, 40 words a minute. Other people are answering them. I'm sitting there with pencil paper. You can't copy anything
No.
at over 18
17,
words a minute.
17 or
But
18.
I'm
Yeah.
just trying to write down a letter. If I hear a letter, I'm just listening for a letter. And I would write down the person's name on the side of the paper. They'd start sending an answer to a question, and I'm just Y, D. Well, I heard an A, right? But the longer I sat in there, and it kind of beat me down, so because I was wallering all in my chair, and I started writing down words. I would hear it after it came,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I'd hear da 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 did it did. It
Backward
was
copy.
was,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I started getting a couple words, and then um, one guy was asked, if you had a yacht, what would you name it? And the Jerry that you just mentioned, he got on his key and he sent out 30 words a minute. I would name my yacht the Miss Wyoming, and I didn't catch all of it, but I caught Miss Wyoming.
That might have been a play on words too, because if he's out on the water all the time, he's going to miss Wyoming.
Yeah, right. All right. Okay. Oh, I got off track, didn't I? Okay, so there we go.
It's your channel.
So let's see. We talked about the setup there. Okay, so you got set up there at your table. We talked about self spotting. So let's talk about, I guess, maybe you're knee deep in the middle of your activation. How was it going? What was your thoughts? What was going through your head? Any fears that you had at first that are now gone? Any fears you thought were coming? What do you got?
Well, as far as the fear factor was concerned, gosh, today was a real plus in that department. Um, when I started off, of course, I was nervous, and after about a half a dozen QSOs, I started feeling less nervous. Honestly, I almost felt cocky, and that's not a good thing ever. And then I went through a few more, and I found my confidence waning a little bit, and then started coming back again. So you're not going to get it all at once. You're not going to get rid of the fear all at once. You can
Uh-huh.
only try to achieve less fear each time,
Right,
is
right.
probably the best way I can describe it. And that's what I'm aiming for.
So all this
Because of
time,
the pressure, it's the pile-up kind of thing that you don't get when you're doing a one-on-one with a QSO buddy.
right.
That's a cakewalk compared to doing POTA activation.
Now let's talk about something here. Before you went, I asked you, or no, I didn't even ask you. You came out with it. And you said my biggest fear is a pileup.
Yeah.
Did you have a pileup hit you?
Not a strong pileup. I would say maybe four or five, and some of them were so weak that I could, hear pieces of my call sign, so I knew they were calling, but I couldn't make them out, and I stuck with the stronger signals, the five nines on up.
So what struck a chord with me there when you said that was not a big one, just 4 or 5. And I think that there's going to be a few people who haven't done a POTA activation who might say to themselves, "Wait, 4 or 5 people called you at once." Ah, right.
Yeah.
So to them, that might be a big pileup.
Well,
How?
you could tell the difference because of the side tone, because their side tone's a little bit different, so you hear all these different frequencies,
There you go.
audio
So you
coming
could
out.
tell that
Yeah,
there's 4 or 5. So
sure.
let's talk about a pileup then, because I think a lot of people have that same fear of a large pileup. So you had a pileup of 4 to 5 people, and now here to you, when you heard it, you just said, "Well, it's about 4 to 5 people." But again, people might go, "Oh my gosh!" But now that you've just experienced a pileup, I think you just realized it wasn't as bad as maybe you thought a pileup might be. What
Right.
you're
Yes.
anticipating 600 people all at the same tone.
Well, you have to set aside the feeling that you're going to insult somebody or hurt someone's feelings or make them feel bad that they didn't get through when everyone else did, all
Right,
of that kind of thing, because you've
right.
got to prioritize. You got to learn to prioritize.
And that, you know, that's another point is I think we all genuinely care, right? And we don't
Mhm.
want to mess up. We
Yeah,
don't want to
exactly.
I don't want to mess up your call. I don't want to make you feel bad for not taking your call.
Hmm.
And that those are good points to make. I just
Yeah,
outfocus
because you
my
might have some new guy out there, again, another this is his first QSO attempt,
correct.
and you don't want to discourage that, but you
Right.
don't know one way or the other.
Absolutely. And all we can do is just do your best to hear it
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
answer it.
Yep.
And I find that I really loved digging those low ones out of the
It's fun
mud. I
when you don't
love
have
a good 339.
yeah, when you have a lot of 599 competition, it's tough.
Yes,
But when you have these, I love digging people out of the soup, even
right,
on one-on-one QSOs, non-POTA. It's
right.
fun.
And
Yeah.
I've got an email too from a guy who because I filmed it, put it on YouTube, and I I also put it logged it and all that stuff. So he knew that I confirmed his call. So I got an email saying, "Hey, thanks for pulling me out of the mud. I know I had a weak signal because I gave him a 339."
Yeah.
And he goes, it was all I had with my QRP radio. I live in an apartment. I don't have a place to put up an antenna, so I can only go QRP portable when I'm hunting parks.
Hmm.
And so he doesn't have the ability to go sit up. He wasn't in a nearby park. He that's his only way he can operate is by leaving the house to operate.
Right.
Then he saw my video, and I got another email from him again because he was just like, "Wow, Ed, you really got my call out of there. That was really cool." And I'm like, "You think it's cool? I think it's cool doing it, uh, sitting there doing POTA, and it almost seems funny. I went yesterday to do a POTA. I had two Elmers with me. The one guy I call my main Elmer. The other guy I call him an Elmer because I learned a lot from him.
Spare Elmo.
W7GCY.
Your
Uh,
spare Elmer.
yeah, my spare Elmer. Yeah, Mark W7GCY. I love that guy. I learned a lot from him. My main Elmer is John KM6NN, and so a pile up came, and all three of us, of course, are listening. I write down and I called out the call sign I had, and my spare Elmer called out a different call. He said the other one was this, and he said it. And I'm like, oh, okay. He called out the stronger one. I called out the weaker one actually,
Hmm.
and we talked about that later. It's like that's kind of amazing. Because it was a weaker station, I could pull him out of the pileup
Yes, I
because it
noticed,
sounded off.
and
So,
I ended up having one of the weaker ones as a QSO. It
right
eventually happened. Yeah.
now we talked about a pileup. Now let's use a term here that folks might not know what it means. Zero beat.
Hmm.
I'll just say 700 because it's usually default. So let's just say I have my radio set at 700 hertz. So that means that every call that comes into me is going to be heard at 700 hertz. The ones that I won't hear at 700 hertz, so if I'm talking on 18070 and 18071, if I'm talking on 18071, you answer me on 18071, you are going to come across my radio on 700 hertz.
Hmm.
But that guy that just grabs his dial and just goes a smidge off one way or the other, I
Close enough.
won't hear them at 700 hertz anymore.
Right.
I will either hear them as do 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 or beep 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 beep
Right.
higher
Hmm.
than the normal tone. And I have found that when I'm hunting parks here at the house, I'll go to the POTA website, I'll look for a guy, I'll go to that frequency, and I'll hear him say da 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 da. I'll hear him say that. Well, 72 or 73 dit
Hmm.
dit. And as soon as you hear that dit dit, that's when everybody throws their call out there. And when I hear a pileup, I used to, do the same thing. I throw my call out there too. But after activating POTAs, I realized I'm a part of the problem, not the solution. So I tried something new. And with our DX10s, we have that button that says clarify transmit.
Transmit.
Or
Yep.
on other radios, it's called a
Just
RIT.
just bump it up 20.
So I crank up the knob or one way or the other, down or up, either a plus 20. I usually go like a plus 30 or 40. So plus 30 or minus 30 or plus 40, minus 40. And then I'll send my call. Every time I've done that, I've been answered the first time out of a
Hmm.
pileup.
So you
Every
stand out.
time.
You stand
Every
out.
time.
Yep.
So if that tidbit of advice helps anybody that may be watching this, when you hear pileups, step off to one side. Just slightly go off frequency, one way or the other. And that helps the activator pull you out. Because when everybody's zero beated on the exact same frequency, it is overwhelming. And I've had a large pileup where I couldn't even tell you how many people it was. It just sounded like I opened the door to a warehouse and 100 people turned and yelled their call signs at me.
Yeah, something you don't encounter on sideband. Not like that.
Right, right. Well, like on a field day, maybe, you might
Yeah,
have that
yeah,
kind of thing.
sure.
But it's very different. And it's weird to describe it because you only have one speaker on your radio, but you can almost envision people at different distances, different ranges, different, because you can hear some louder than others. But if in CW they're all zero beated, off one way or the other. Okay, so you do your login. We talked about the fears. You've decided now, you know, when it came time to ending, I'll say this, for my first activation, I didn't say like I'm gonna make 20 today. I just went out there hoping to make 10, of course,
That's what I started with. Yep.
right? I just hope to activate. And then after I hit the 10, it was so kind of
Wanted to
like
keep going.
overwhelming that I was like, I'm done.
It was,
I'm done.
oh no, no. When I hit 10, I had a rush like a drug
Right?
administration or something, and I just wanted more.
Right? Yes.
I
Okay.
had to I had to call it at 17 because we had other things to do today.
Uh, also, so if you didn't have anything else to do, you would have
Oh, I'd have stayed.
would
Oh
have kept
yeah, yeah.
going.
I'd have kept on going until I didn't get anything anymore.
So
Oh
now
yeah,
let's talk about this then.
it's a drug.
Okay, now let's hit this point up. How many times had Ed said, Eric, you POTA yet? Eric, you get out there yet? No, not yet. Well, not yet, not yet.
A
But
couple of
now
weeks.
that
Couple of
but,
weeks.
but now that you now that you've done it, do you go, gosh, I wish I'd have done this sooner?
Oh yeah. Well, see, we had the 100 plus temperature here for a
Well,
month.
besides
Besides the
temperature,
temperature, yeah, I mean,
all that,
I was champing at the bit to get out there but the stupid weather that we had here for such a
right?
long time.
But besides it, my main focus point for that would be all these folks that are thinking about it and thinking about
Oh,
it. I would say that what we all have in common is um,
irrational hesitation.
hesitating to get out there.
Yeah.
Don't you wish you'd have done that? So, and I mentioned that QRQ class.
Hmm.
I put audit next to my name because you can do that in Zoom. LACW says go to these classes that are above your pay grade, and next to your name there, just type the word audit, and that means that you're just there to listen. You want to see what it's about. Maybe
I,
try to play
I did
along.
that with Quentin's class. I did it with
Right?
Quentin's class. Yeah.
So I put audit next to my name. I'm sitting back there in the corner, trying to get letters. I'm flopping all over my chair. All of a sudden, I hear, all right, Ed, it's your turn.
Is there another Ed?
So I'm looking for other Eds, and oh no, he
No.
does. I said, well, I'm just auditing, but you know what? Nobody I have
Yeah.
found, and I've been in LICW long enough to know, no one cares. They
No.
know you're going to mess up. We know you're going to have mistakes.
Because
We
everybody
know,
does.
we know by the word audit that you are in a class higher than your level,
Yeah.
and it's not like I'm in anybody's way because that's how
No,
you
they're
feel
smiling about the fact that you're willing to try.
that you're there. They
Yep.
are they
Yep.
are curious to see
Yeah.
because everyone knows the other thing that you're farther along than you think you are.
Hmm.
And so they gave me a turn, and I've been in more stressful situations, so I'm not. So it's like, well, all right, well, let's do it. I'm still okay. I said, and of course I preface it. Well, folks, this is above my level, but I'm here because I want a challenge. So I guess we'll do it. So he sent me a question, and I was like, are you gonna send a question or are you
40
kicking?
words per minute.
Yeah. And but he sent it, and then he said, I sent to you, and then he told me what he sent. And he says, I sent to you, what is your biggest regret? Oh, ooh, I had to think about that one. So I said, okay. Now his instructions to everybody in the class, it isn't a set number. Everyone here will try 35 words a minute. He told everyone before they sent, because that's what he did. He sent everybody a question and told them to reply. Because we had talked earlier about making sure that you work above a certain, like I'm here, you should be practicing here. I'm comfortable here, well then you need to practice here. So he told everybody, whatever your speed is that you are sending at, try to send faster today, whatever your speed is. So he said that. So I went up to 23 words a minute, and I tried sending, and I got it out, and I learned that I was sandbagging a little bit because I got it out, and I think with maybe one minor mistake, and I sent. I wish I had started CW sooner with only one little mistake. So I think I might even been sandbagging. Maybe I should have went to 27 and just accepted the fact I'm going to make a bunch of mistakes. And if that's the case, well, then come down a little bit of a notch. And so, but it was a great lesson learned about working outside your comfort level. And I think that getting out there and doing a POTA activation, my wife, now she still hasn't gone through all her beginner class to learn the rest of her letters. Um, so I'm constantly going, "Hey, you gonna go out and do a POTA?" She's like, "No." And it's funny because the way she says that, I remember me going, "I'm not ready. I'm not ready." But that was my goal though. I wanted to go do a POTA.
Yeah.
Now my Elmer went with me, and I did all the work. He just sat next to me with a scratch pad, and I would call CQ. A call sign would come. I would write down anything I could, look at his paper, get my fills, and then I would do all the key work. So let's get back on track to that. So what I'm just saying at that point is just go do it. Just go do it. Would you have that same advice? Just go do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just do it.
Just do it.
There's a practice recording series that I have that sent it all 32 words per minute with different Farnsworth from 15 up to 23 maybe.
Right.
And I was encouraged to listen to it way faster than I thought I could copy.
Right. And that's
And
through
I was
CW
yeah.
Innovations.
Well, yeah, and I started with CWI exactly, and I started at the 15 Farnsworth, and I
Mhm.
thought yeah, I was having a little trouble,
Right.
okay, because it was 32.
Uh-huh.
So I bumped it up to 19
Yeah.
Farnsworth,
Uh-huh.
and I listened to that, and I was doing better than I thought. And then I went down to 17, which was a little more comfortable, but I was doing better at 17 than I did at 15.
Right. So now let's talk about the other hesitation about getting out there and doing POTA
hmm
is not, you don't feel like you can, I think, get the call signs. So watching YouTube videos was something I did. Would you say that watching K4SWL, W0ABE, W4,
EMB.
W4, W4EB, um,
Yes, to all.
yeah,
It helps. Yep.
W4ARB, Aaron.
Yes. And if
Um,
you have the ability, like on Wordless Trainer or something similar, LACW, do the call signs. Just do them
right,
because today I did far better with call signs than I had ever thought I would at this
right.
stage.
And that was my point. And my last 3 POTA activations have been the best call sign copying I've ever done.
And those are the hardest things because there's no rhyme or reason. There's no logical progression from one letter to the other,
Correct.
like a
Correct.
word.
And did I tell you the story about Hungry yesterday?
Yeah, you
Okay.
did.
So when you talk about it's the hardest thing to copy, um, I to let others know, I'm at a park, I'm calling CQ POTA, and I heard a H A HA9RE, and it was such a what was that? Because you don't expect an H
H.
when you're 5 watts portable out in the middle of a woods in Stewart County, Tennessee.
I thought I had an O today, but I wasn't positive and it disappeared. So,
Right, right.
but it would have been nice.
But I've had a friend, and my first DX was a France, and it was just an F5 something something, and I question marked him. I don't know how many. Like I think the FCC sent me a letter and said no more question mark. No, not really. But I question, and then he finally went F5, F5, and I saw it F5 da 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 da, and he went Roger, 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 and he beat it. And I'm like, oh, because it was such a shock to get
hmm
a a um a DX contact when your QRP portable in
Right.
I'm in Tennessee. I mean, so be prepared for that, especially if you're anywhere near the gray line. And for those that don't know the gray line, meaning sunrise or sunset is a coming. You're in daylight, but the gray line's coming towards you. I found I went out at like 7 p.m. On the POTA. It's got the early bird activator, the late activator. So I went out in the evening and set up. It wasn't dark, because it was middle of the summer. Um, and that particular one, I got 4 DX QSOs in that one activation. But I
Wow.
was more prepared for it because in my previous experience, I learned that if I get out there during that gray line, I get
Sure.
that crazy
Yep.
propagation.
Yep.
And anyway, okay, I guess back on subject. Tear down. So now you're done. All right, got things to do. Now in your particular case, for me it was like, whew, okay, I'm done. QRT, QRT. And I just was relieved to be done and get my first one done. For you, you wanted to stay out there and keep on
Wanted to
going.
stay, but my wife was there. She was walking the dog. She needed to get back
Time to
home.
go.
So I
Yeah,
thought,
time to
well,
go.
I
Yeah.
can't complain because how many have their wives go along with
Well,
them?
of course.
Protocol.
And that was so cool that Debbie went with you and and
Yes,
and
she just wants to
supported
get out of
you.
the house, so that's good.
Yeah. But now, so let's talk about your breakdown. Any lessons learned on breaking down? Like,
Just make sure that you double check everything because my nightmare scenario, what I brought to mind was don't leave your antenna. You got the
yes,
coax and
right.
you got the counterpoise leads. Don't leave the antenna itself.
And K4 SWL said that in one of his
Oh,
videos.
did he?
He took it all up
Yeah.
and he left. And
Oh no.
he pointed. He went back to the park and he goes, and he found a piece of coax at the park and he says, I can't. He says, I can't make jokes about a guy leaving a coax. He goes, and he pointed to the trees. He goes, because I left a vertical over there for a week. So I can't talk about a guy who forgot his coax.
Right, right.
And then he edited the video, and on the bottom he put, by the way, if this is your coax, you'll find it at the visitor center, lost and found.
Did
And
he get his antenna back? Did he
oh
find it?
yes, he
Oh,
said that he
good.
got his
Okay.
antenna back, but he said they had a great laugh about it. But he said that vertical antenna just blended into the tree so well.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
went out there, undid the coax, and
Well, mine was
that's
kind of in a. I have to send you the picture, but mine was kind of stood out against the sky background, and the
sure,
canopy of trees were on both sides, so it was out in the
sure,
middle of a clearing,
sure.
so it worked out nice.
Now I will say this: I had my two Elmers with me when I did my POTA, so I'm on the breakdown portion now.
Hmm.
Um, and they start grabbing this. I go, stop, stop. And they're like, well, we're just helping you. I said, no, no, just sit down at the bench. I got this. And they're like, yeah, but we'll help you out. I go, no, no. And then my Elmer goes, no, I know what you mean. You're right. You're right. You got a system. I said, exactly.
Yeah,
And it's not about you're messing up my system. It's that after I
out of
wrap
order.
up my coax, I get my
The
antenna. I
next
place
thing,
it.
yes.
So it prevents me from
You stay
missing
with
a
your
step.
sequence. You
Right,
stay with
getting
your
out of
sequence.
sequence.
Yeah.
And then I put this, after I take this down, I put it in there. After I take this down, I put it in that pouch.
Hmm.
Because then the next time you go and you open something up and it's not where you thought it was because maybe you wrapped up my coax for me while I was doing my ground radials and you handed it to me. I'm like, oh, where did I stick that while I finished my radials?
Hmm.
And then when I go for it next, it's not where I thought it was.
Yeah,
And it's not I mean, obviously it's in my stuff somewhere, but what if it's somewhere really well hidden?
yeah.
And
It's true of any hobby. I mean, I'm also an amateur astrophotographer, and back in the early '90s, we were in California, and the one-way drive to our dark sky site was about 90 miles. And I packed up everything, I thought, and I drove the 90 miles all the way out there. And this was a big scope, about the size of a water heater, small water
right,
heater, Newtonian reflector for those who know. And I got there and I started unpacking everything and realized that I left the counterweights at home that goes on the end of that
yep.
long shaft to balance the
Was
scope.
that a showstopper?
Yeah, I had to pack up and go home. It was a
Right.
waste.
So that's the lesson there on the breakdown of
Yep.
the POTA
And I
is
and I made a list after that until it became a habit.
there you go.
Yeah.
So and what I found, Eric, is that my first list is just like your first plan. It's going to change.
Yep.
And so I would
But today already.
I would say that you have your plan, you go out and you're doing it, and as you learn what they are, what those things are, just understand that things will change as you execute them, and be open-minded to that change.
Right.
And then the other bit of advice I would have would be if you do have a park close by, and you have the time, go 2, 3, 4 days in a row. Set up, make QSOs, tear down, come home. Go set up, tear down, go home at the park. And then you will quickly develop that routine.
Hmm.
When I was working towards my kilo, I went to this park that's about 15 minutes away every day, 20 days in a row. It was almost like getting up and going to work because I was getting up at 6 a.m., going down. So I made sure that everything was packed in the vehicle beforehand. The only thing that I had out was my notebook that I take because in here's where I keep my paper logs.
Hmm.
And
Send
and
me a link for that. Did you get it on Amazon? Oh, that's the icon one that we were talking
no,
about?
this is just a pocket one. So I
Okay.
have my band plan in here, and that's a joke from today for those that don't know. When Eric first went to 17, he was a little to the left edge of the band.
Right
But,
on the edge.
right.
18068. You can't get more left.
But anyway, so I carry a scratch paper. Oh, I forgot to mention that. I carry scratch paper because I'll lay my scratch paper right on top of my log, and then as call signs are coming, I'll kind of scribble them, and then as I'm doing my thing, I'll come up and rewrite it here. And then after I have a bunch of listed call signs, I will go through and draw lines and scribble them out just so I because you have to plan on distractions. You have to plan on the dog chasing a squirrel. You have to plan on a person talking to you. And so you want to make sure you do have a few things set up to as safety nets so that if you do get distracted, oh, okay, I did. Okay, yeah, I crossed that out. So this is the step where I'd left off, especially when you're in a QSO
Hmm.
and the script. And so the bit of advice I would have for you though, going out the door, would be um, programming that radio with your two statements, your CQ POTA, CQ POTA. This is WZ5 Mike Mike, WZ55 Mike Mike, okay, and then the bye bye message.
Hmm.
And Eric and I discussed this on my bye bye message. I actually lengthened mine on my last POTA activation. It used to just be Roger, Roger, thanks, 72, dit, dit. But when I recorded it that way, and then I would play it, and I'm sitting there trying to write or maybe correct something I wrote a little messy, or I'm making a correction to a call sign and copied wrong, my bye bye message is done. And as soon as that dit dit hits, that's when the people are calling you.
Hmm.
So the bye bye message, even though you're like, well, I didn't like earlier you said, yeah, I changed this because it was really long.
Hmm.
Your
Stop
beginning
it.
message,
Use that.
right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Which yeah, that does get kind of dry when you're listening to CQ,
Yeah.
CQ POTA. Yeah, come
I
on,
just
let me
do
understand.
CQ, POTA,
Yeah,
DE, call sign. That's it.
right. So I changed my bye bye message and made it longer on purpose. And as I was discussing with Eric yesterday, I've still been too afraid to come off paper and go to a digital. So I lengthened my bye bye message to Roger Roger ESTU DE W4EMB 72 dit dit.
Yep.
And that
Many
gives
time to
me
collect your thoughts.
it get not only that, but I programmed that in yesterday. I hit play, and when I hit play, I wrote on my paper log, and then I took my fingers to the top of the picnic table, and I pretended like I was typing on the tablet the
Hmm.
call sign and the RST and enter, because that's what you would enter on hammers. Hammers, HAMRS. It has a HAMRS is a great thing to use. I'm gonna write that down. HAMRS. Also, because I'm throwing in the plugs. So we talked about the Long Island CW Club. I would give that a 10 out of 10 place to go learn your letter.
CW Innovations.
Coming to that one next.
All right.
LICW to go learn your letters, and to go to some other classes too. I say classes, but there's like 90 calendar events. Don't use all those calendar events as an excuse to not be on the air yet. Oh well, I'm just in beginner three this. Once you get through your BC1 and your BC2 and you've learned your letters, you should be on the air, period. You should
Yeah.
even be on the air prior to getting out of BC2, honestly,
Yeah. Learn the common characters for a quick QSO.
because you have
It-
enough to get on the air.
Yes, you have enough.
And then CW Innovations, outstanding, outstanding. If you want to get rid of this
Hmm.
and get that easy copyability, CW Innovations is the way to go.
I
And
was into it for 2 weeks when I dropped the pencil early August.
and how refreshing does it feel?
It's liberating. Well, number one, you're not.
Liberating.
I went into it with the attitude that okay, I can miss what's being sent to me because I can't write fast enough, or I can miss what is being sent to me because I'm doing head copy.
Right.
I chose the latter.
Right. But liberating. And
Yep.
that's the thing. What keeps us off the air, what keeps us from doing this or doing that is we feel afraid. But guess what?
Nobody
Liberating.
cares.
That
Nobody
that
cares.
that explains it a lot. But
That's
now
what the question mark is for.
I will have to say this with LICW, you can go
Hmm.
in there without a hand license. You can go in there not knowing a single dit from a DA because that's what it's there for. I would like to say that for CW Innovations, you need to be on the air. If you're going
Yeah.
to go to CW Innovations,
Yes.
you need to be on the air.
Yep.
You need to be making QSOs every day,
And
and you need to
regardless
be
of license class, we had a technician in our class
correct.
that was we restricted to 40 and 15. That was pretty much
But now
all you
you can
do.
get on the air
But
as
he's
a
on the air,
technician.
and he's made such a great improvement before he's even a general.
Made a great improvement. So
Yep.
that's where it's at.
Mhm.
What is the purpose of the CW Innovations? It's to take a person who is on the air and they can copy, but they really need to get down that instant character recognition and they need to get rid of that pencil
Yep.
or and get down that path,
Mhm.
liberating. So CW Innovations, Long Island CW Club, Hammers, as far as an app that you can use to log, is great. There's a POTA format already built in. And then, of course, you have the POTA log sheet, which can be found on W4EMB's YouTube page,
499 plus
plus royalties.
royalties. Thank you.
We're not here for the money. Um, although I'm going to try something for the first time because I'm getting these emails from Amazon about Amazon affiliate, whatever. And I noticed all the big boys are doing it. If they're like, here's the key I used. Here's the, and you asked me about this. Hey, you want to link to this?
Yeah.
This is actually right in the rain. So it's actually waterproof.
Oh, okay. Okay. You
Yeah.
mentioned that once before. All
So
right,
it,
I'll look
it
it up.
it's a waterproof thing.
Yeah.
But it's right in the rain. Has this on here to hold it, the clipboard, of
Right.
course. And in it came with a right in the rain tablet as well.
Tablet. You can write on that paper in the rain.
That's not it. Yeah, so it came with a Right in the Rain tablet. I do prefer a good sharp mechanical pencil. I use this Kuru Toga pencil. This is 5 millimeter. What's cool about this is it has a ratcheting tip. So as you write with a pencil, you keep turning your pencil in your hand. This one does it for you.
A caveat on that, it depends on how much pressure you use normally writing.
No, correct.
It does not function for me.
Oh,
I still had to
you
mechanically
had to
advance
do
it
this.
because it was a softer
Well,
pressure
you
for
you
me.
you do write a little soft.
Yeah, yeah, a little
You quit holding
swishy.
your pinky out when you write, you'll
Yeah.
be okay.
Well, no, that's just for tea.
Oh, that's right. T. T. Anyway, and then I do find that and this is 0.5 millimeter, but being in Texas where it's hot, I guess now we're talking about the planning on the activation, is I have my Right in the Rain paper. It's not raining. And I have my tablet here, or I have my papers that I just print off, that I did this on Excel, just print them off.
Right.
But when I sit down and it's 87% humidity and I'm trying to write and it's early in the morning, so the grass is dewy and I'm writing on, I'll start my, it's hard to write on regular paper because of the humidity in the air. So
Okay.
I'll switch over to that Right in the Rain tablet and I took a ruler and on a couple of pages, I just drew my columns on there and I used a fatter pencil thickness. I
Point seven.
go to either 7 millimeter or 9 millimeter.
By the way, for the listeners, I have a similar version to Ed's log sheet, but I charge $3.99.
Okay, 2.99. And then the last one thing I'll touch on is too, we forgot to mention at the top of the log sheet is it says LICW number and SKCC number
Hmm.
because when you're out there doing POTA, someone from one of your organizations you belong to may contact you and send you, you'll be sitting there CQ POTA, and all of a sudden you hear WZ5 Mike Mike. Hey, WZ5 Mike Mike, you're 5 and in, Tennessee. And he'll come back with, thanks, you're 559 Texas, and SKCC, here, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, was that a park to park? What was that? So be prepared for park to parks, be prepared for SKCC numbers if you're in that group. And I found this out, Eric. I had a person send me an SKCC number or an LICW number, and I said, sorry, POTA today, SKCC tomorrow. or or I just said, sorry, POTA today.
Right.
And they said, oh, okay,
Yeah.
FB, fine business.
Oh,
Um,
could have been something else.
and then the park to park, because numbers is what trips people up, and they're afraid of a park to park. Here's the secret: if you're the park activator and you're calling CQ POTA, they've gone to the POTA website and found you
Hmm.
because maybe they have coverage at their park and they decide they're going to hunt a couple. They have your park number already,
Hmm.
but now you're like, well, I got to copy theirs. No, you don't. You know, because I found out, and it may not work all the time, but I found out that you send me blah 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 blah. I didn't get that. I question mark it. Blah 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 blah. God, gosh, me and numbers. Roger, thank you. 72. Dit. And then I found that when I go home, I type up my log and I send it to the POTA website. The POTA website knows that I was at a park. The POTA website knows you're at a park, and it parks this for us.
Okay, nice.
And
Nice.
I
Did
found that out when I started going back and looking, and I see that I had no park to parks here. But when I go back and open up my stuff, I see I got 3 park to parks from that activation. And I go, I don't have any park to parks. But I realized they were at a park, I was at a park, and the POTA website did it for us. So I didn't
nice.
realize that. I was really strung out about trying to copy a park to park.
Yeah. Very nice.
Well, let me go ahead and stop this recording before it goes too far. And once it hits 3 hours, nobody watches it anyway. And just to
Try
prove
one
that
third
point,
that.
and just to prove that point, if you're still watching, WZ5 Mike is good on QRZ. If you write him an email, send him a self-addressed stamped envelope, he will email, or he will take that self-addressed stamped envelope, he'll put a $5 bill in it and send it to you. Again, that's
Actually,
WZ5
to
Mike.
the contrary, I accept no self-addressed stamped envelopes. Just send me your card and you'll get one.
All right then. So let's go ahead and
Okay.
stop that recording. Thanks everybody for watching.